All right, folks. Glad you could join us. Thank you for being here. Those of you who are in person and online, it is a blessing as usual. We do have kids' church, so if you have not done so and you are a little one, go ahead and follow Miss Amy. She will take you to a beautiful place of wonders and excitement. One last bit of information. If your last name ends with C, D, F, or S, before you leave today, please check the cubbies. You might have a little Christmas cards there. Again, if you have not done so in the last week or so. We will not mail it to you. So probably your last opportunity to get your little Christmas card from those who have included you in their list. Here we are today, the last Sunday of December of the year of 2023. Not only last Sunday, but last day, technically. Today's sermon is not a New Year's sermon per se, but definitely principles that we can glean and utilize for the purposes of the newness that is in our calendar. Things that seem like they are beginning and ending, if you will. We will continue to look at the story that we started a few weeks ago pertaining to the conquest of the city kingdom of Jericho. So we have the last portion of that story. I know you've been kind of at the edge of your seats. Did not want you to end the year without knowing actually what happened with Jericho. So here we are. All of you who, again, were interested in that information. Today's text is going to be in Joshua chapter 6 from verse 17 to 27. And another bit of information as you're getting ready. Today's sermon requires you to put your big boy theological pants on. So get ready for that. We are going to talk about certain attributes of God that we see very clearly in this story that are very much important, right? When we talk about this time of year where everything's kind of new and people are starting to do things that they haven't done before or restart things that they usually start but never finish, it's nice to look upon things that are constant and timeless. And there's nothing more constant and timeless as these attributes, as these qualities of God. We will see very clearly as the story is unfolding and at the very end of the story, God being depicted as a sovereign God. What does that even mean? What does it mean to be a sovereign? Well, basically it means that you have a right to rule. But not only do you have a right to rule, you have the ability to do so. And those two things work hand in hand, right? Some people have a right, but they don't have the ability. Other people have abilities, but they don't have the right. God, in the biggest stage, in the grandest way possible, he has a right to rule, and he has the ability to do so. And because he has both of these, he can do whatever he wants. God is not only sovereign, and maybe below this umbrella, we see God being depicted as a just God. Justice is a part of his attribute, as his quality. Now, justice has to do with who God is, but also how he rules. It has to do with the fact that he dispenses, he gives out deserved punishment. He has a standard, a righteous standard. And as a ruler, he has this divine right to not only evaluate, but judge based on his perfect justice. But not only is he a just God, not only is justice part of his nature, he is also a merciful God, which is at the surface almost counterintuitive, because if justice has to do with evaluating people, based on his perfect standards and dishing out correction, punishment, if you will. Mercy has to do with pardoning, with forgiving those who are very much guilty and undeserving of that said mercy. All of that included in this little text. I told you, big boy theological pants on. Keep them up. Don't let them sag. Hope you wore your suspenders today. Again, so we'll take a look at Joshua chapter 6 from verse 17 to 27. Usually we read through the whole text, but this one it's a little beneficial for us to take it in portions. So I'll read a couple of verses, we'll talk about it, and then we'll move on to the next few verses as we head to the conclusion of the chapter. So let's take a look at the first few verses from verse 17 to verse 19. And here we will see God's sovereignty in display, his decree upon Jericho. Okay? So from verse 17 it says, "Now the city shall be doomed by the Lord to destruction, it and all who are in it. Only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all who are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And you by all means abstain from the accursed things, lest you become accursed when you take of the accursed things and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. But all the silver and gold and vessels of bronze and iron are consecrated to the Lord. They shall come into the treasury of the Lord." If you have not been with us, or if you just forgot, the children of Israel have officially entered into the promised land. And again, Jericho was this first city, state, nation, empire, if you will, kingdom that they were battling, that they were trying to conquer. It was a very fortified city, huge, thick walls, a great challenge for anyone who was trying to conquer this area of the world. And in a very uncommon and unexpected way, there was a strategy that God gave to Joshua, who was the person in charge. The children of Israel were to walk around these walls and do so once per day. On the seventh day, they were supposed to do this 7 times. So this is where we are at in history. And then they were to shout, to blow the trumpets, and the walls would come down. So this is what is happening at this point in time. And as this is happening, instruction is being given, right? God is instructing Joshua, and Joshua is instructing the people. And here we have an instruction pertaining to the fate of the citizens of Jericho. Now, let's take a look at some of the verbiage and the words that are being used here. I don't know what version of the Bible that you have. I have the New King James Version. It's the same version that is being projected in front of you. Maybe you have another version or translation of the Bible, but in my particular one it says, "Now the city shall be doomed by the Lord to destruction." There's a little word here that is very significant. It is an interesting word. It is the word that is translated here as doomed by the Lord to destruction. I actually don't like how the New King James Version translates this. It almost seems like it's 2 words and it has by the Lord in between. But think of this word as being translated doomed to destruction. It's a little word that is utilized in the Old Testament, 30 or sometimes, 30 to 40 times. It's not a word that comes up very often. And it is translated in different ways. And depending on the translation or the version of your Bible, you might have a different word. This word can be translated as something positive, like devoted. I think the NIV has that translation, devoted. Or it can also be translated as accursed. And you put those 2 ideas together, you get the gist of what is being said here. This word, harem. If you want to be especially Jewish, you have to use that the German throat sound. Harem. It is a term that is utilized for something that is devoted to destruction. It is a word that is utilized when God chooses to appoint something, someone, to be utterly consumed and destroyed for his purposes, based on his sovereign will. It is the word that we have here on verse 17, but it's also a word that is utilized 3 other times on verse 18. So again, as I read this, pay special attention when this word comes up. Verse 17 once more. Now the city shall be doomed by the Lord to destruction. So that's that little term. It and all who are in it. Only Rahab, the harlot, shall live, she and all who are within her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. So think of Rahab as sort of a parenthesis per se. Now going back to this idea, verse 18. And you by all means abstain from the accursed. Same word. Things, lest you become accursed. Again, same word. When you take of the accursed things, same word, and make the camp of Israel a curse and trouble it. So this word is being utilized and repeated over and over and over again. The sovereign God, the one who not only has the right to rule, but the ability to do so as he pleases, has established this decree. Jericho is devoted for destruction. To destruction. Make sure you do so completely and utterly as I have prescribed it to you. If you do not, you will also take part in this destruction. That is what it is being said here. This is the instruction. This is what Joshua received from God and what Joshua is telling his people. Now, just at face value, seems kind of harsh, don't you think? As we will see later on, what does it mean to destroy an entire city, an entire kingdom? It means to destroy the walls, buildings, but also the people, the men, the women, the children, the animals. Kind of harsh. You can question even the validity of why God would do such a thing. However, within context, previous things that have been stated in this narrative, we know that there are certain standards, there are certain procedures that the children of Israel needed to follow as they were entering the promised land and conquering this region. One of the standards was that they were first to engage in battle, but then extend some type of peace agreement. If the kingdom, if the people, if the rulers accepted that, they would not be killed and would become subjects to the Israelites. And if not, destruction would occur. But also, even aside from that, these people were people who, for a very long time, had benefited from God's patience. When the children of Israel were being instructed back in Deuteronomy about what was to come, they were told that they should not be like the ones that they would encounter in Canaan. Namely, they should not partake in witchcraft, in child sacrifices, in idolatry, in illicit sexual behavior. There is a bunch of stuff that was very much common practice amongst these people. And God had been patient for a very long time. And here these people were going to be judged based on God's justice, based on his moral code, based on his perfect standards. But again, he has a right to rule. He is sovereign. And not only does that encompass this justice, but also, to an extent, he gets to choose. He gets to have mercy upon certain things and certain people. Look at how the narrative continues. So if we pick up on verse 19, it says, "But all the silver and the gold and the vessels of bronze and iron are consecrated to the Lord, they shall come into the treasury of the Lord. Now, there's another word here that is being utilized, the term here that is translated as consecrated. This is a more common term, much more so than the previous term that I alluded to, the term that means dedicated for destruction. This term means to be separated, usually for blessed, holy, redeemable purposes. It's something that God chooses, and at face value, it really is not beneficial at all for his purposes, but he chooses to redeem that. And out of everything of that city, he chose to redeem these precious metals, the silver, the gold, the bronze, iron. These were the spoils of war. Anytime you have a battle, usually the conquering army takes some of the goodies. And here, this was to serve as a first fruit of sorts. Not only was this the first city being conquered and attacked, but also certain things were going to be kept. And God wanted to keep them as, again, his portion. And other things were to be kept by the children of Israel eventually. So now we have these decisions being made. Certain things are devoted for destruction, separated for that purpose. Other things are devoted, separated for redeemable, blessed purposes. Now, you might start to question God's ability to rule here. You might start to wonder, why? Can't you save some people as well? Why only consecrate? Why only keep precious metals? That seems rather arbitrary. That seems rather questionable. Save some people for God's sake. Well, we know that the story includes that as well. Even though most of the inhabitants of the city were destroyed, God did consecrate. God did separate. God did put to the side some people, for his blessed purposes. Not necessarily because they deserved it, not because they had it coming for them, because they were very good, but because he is sovereign. So let's see how the story picks up on verse 20. So the people shouted. We'll read from 20 to 21. So the people shouted when the priests blew the trumpets, and it happened when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout that the wall fell down flat. Then the people went up into the city, every man straight before him, and they took the city. And they utterly destroyed, again, separated for destruction. Same word here in the verb manner, not the noun that we saw before. All that was in the city, both men and women, young and old, ox, sheep, and donkey. Man, why the donkeys? With the edge of the sword. So we have separated for a purpose. And this purpose being the purpose of destruction. But not all people were going to be destroyed, as we've seen and talked about before. And on verse 22 it continues, but Joshua had said to the two men who had spied out the country, go into the harlot's house, and from there bring out the woman and all that she has, as you swore to her. And the young men who had been spies went in and brought out Rahab, her father, her mother, her brothers, and all that she had. So they brought out all her relatives and left them outside the camp of Israel. But they burned the city and all that was in it with the fire. Only the silver and the gold and the vessels of bronze and iron they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. And Joshua spared Rahab the harlot, her father's household, and all that she had. So she dwells in Israel till this day, because she hid the messengers whom Joshua sent to spy out. So initially, we have this sovereign decree upon Jericho. And below this umbrella of God's sovereignty, we have decisions being made. We have decisions being made pertaining to what is going to be appointed for destruction and appointed for beneficial, blessed, redeemable purposes. The entire city, the walls, and the inhabitants, most of them were going to be destroyed. Some of the precious metals were going to be saved for godly purposes. But not only that, we see an individual and her family being redeemed and being saved. Again, justice being balanced by mercy. God has a right to rule, and his just decrees and standards, they reign. And those who do not abide by those should be punished, should be dealt with. But guess what? No one really escapes from that. Wouldn't you agree? If God was only just, everyone and everything would need to be appointed for destruction. Not one. All of us here, throughout history, everything and anything that has been touched by the fall, all those things fall short of the perfection and justice of God. That would be the fairest thing of all. The sovereign God who is able to rule, who has the right to rule, and has this right to do it in any way that he pleases, the right thing to do would be for him to bestow his justice upon humanity, this fallen world, and everything would be devoted for destruction. However, in a way or for reasons that we can't really fully grasp or imagine, he is also a merciful God. What does that mean to be a merciful God? What does that mean to be merciful? Does that mean that you pick and choose the cream of the crop? Does that mean that you choose those who are worthy of your mercy, who are better than the rest? No, very often you see depictions in the Bible of God's mercy being bestowed upon those who are specially unworthy. And it does not make sense. And again, we've gone through the story of Rahab, who was a model citizen, who was worthy to be in the lineage of Christ because she was a beautiful maiden, educated from birth in the best schools of Jericho, taught everything that one needs to be taught to be in this royal line. No. Rahab, the pagan, lying prostitute. One could go through the census of Jericho, and you could pretty much pick most anyone that would be more worthy of God's mercy. Yet here she is, being saved. Now it is true, she had some sort of agency in this. She had a part in this. We've seen over and over again, starting in chapter 2, but this is also repeated in other places where the entire city heard about the God of the Israelites and they were scared. So she was one of them that had heard all the stories, but she was the one that chose to utilize that knowledge, and it promoted her faith to the point where she saved the spies. Other people, I guess, theoretically could have done this, but she was the one that actually did it. But even that can be explained by other terms. We know that the Bible describes faith as a gift from God as well. So in one way or another, she was endowed with this ability, this blessed ability to believe and to act upon her faith. So here she is, being redeemed, being separated for blessed, merciful purposes. Again, not only the fact that she was saved when most other people were not, her and her household, her families, her father's family, but also she was able to live amongst God's people. The term or the idea that is being utilized here, it says till this day, which leads us to believe that this was, written a little bit after the fact, but she was still around. People still knew of her. And we know that not only was she redeemed and saved in a physical sense, but again, for blessed purposes, to the point where she became David's great grandmother. You might add another great in there. You probably could if you go through the lineage. Technically, I think she was the great-great-grandmother of David, but those lineages usually, they're not meant to be so thorough, so there might have been other people included in there. But she was up there in the greats. And we know who David, the great King David was, and how he was linked in this family tree of Jesus Christ. So here we see the elements of God's nature, his sovereignty, his justice, his mercy, usually bestowed upon those who are least likely. Again, not the cream of the crop, not the best of the bunch, not those who do things to deserve it or to earn it or try their very best. Just because he is God, he has the right to do so. But again, just because he is merciful doesn't mean that he is a pushover. Look at how the story ends. Verse 26 to 27. Then Joshua charged them at the time, saying, Cursed be the man before the Lord who rises up and builds the city of Jericho. He shall lay its foundation with his firstborn, with his youngest he shall set up its gates. So the Lord was with Joshua. His fame spread throughout all the country. There's a story, you don't have to turn there. I'll refer to the text if you want to jot it down. 1 Kings chapter 16, verse 34. There is this person, Hiel of Bethel. And at the time of King Ahab, the husband of Jezebel, within that context of the atrocious things that will happen during his reign, there is a small note, there's a mention of this individual. And essentially, this individual started to rebuild Jericho. And he did so at the cost of his two sons. Essentially, when he started the work, that cost his firstborn. And when he ended the work, that cost his youngest son. And it's just there. It's just thrown in there. Not much else is said. Again, 500 to 600 years later, just a mention. Just a reminder. Hey, guess what? I'm loving. I'm merciful. I'm a good God. I'm still just. My standards remain. They are everlasting. Maybe it takes a generation or two for you to realize that. Few hundred years, 5, 6, who knows? My word remains. I am faithful to my word. So here we have the conclusion of this story. The walls came down. People shouted. Most things were destroyed. Some things were redeemed. And in a time of year where we think a lot about new things, progressing in areas of our lives that need adjustments, needs, betterment, maybe trying something that we haven't tried before, or again, something that we faltered and failed so many times, but now it seems, what better time to do it again? Here's something that is timeless. It's not a fad. It's not a 3-step program. It's not something overly motivational. Definitely something that you have not heard before. Again, you've heard it before. Might have said that wrong. Nothing new. And if this helps you lose some weight, so be it. Get in shape, go for it. If meditating upon this fact, this timeless truth, helps you to become a better human being, a better father, a better mother, a better husband, a better wife, a better child, so be it. If this helps you to appreciate even more the part that you have in the church and in your church, so be it. If this helps you progress in your faith, so be it. If this helps you appreciate what you have, what has been given to you, not because you've earned it, not because there is merit, not because you deserve it, simply put, because God is merciful. What better way to start the new year? With the knowledge and understanding, with the reminder and appreciation of this God who is sovereign, the ability and the right to rule. The God of Romans chapter 9, who has vessels for wrath, but also for blessed purposes. And we are the clay. Do with us as you will. Thank you for your mercy bestowed upon us in the person of Christ.